to biology, the scientific study of life. Exaggerated, self-directed, or diminished immune responses can cause disease. The highly regulated interplay of lymphocytes with foreign substances with each other and with other body cells provides extraordinary protection against many pathogens. However, if this delicate balance is disrupted by an immune system malfunction, the effects on the individual can range from the minor inconvenience of some allergies to the serious and often fatal consequences of certain autoimmune and immunodeficiency diseases. Allergies are exaggerated, hypersensitive responses to certain antigens called allergens. One hypothesis to explain the origin of allergies is that they are evolutionary remnants of the immune system's response to parasitic worms. The humoral mechanisms that combats worms is similar to the allergic response that causes such disorders as hay fever and allergic asthma. The most common allergies involve antibodies of the IgE class. Hay fever, for instance, occurs when plasma cells secrete IgE antibodies specific for antigens on the surface of pollen grains. Some of these antibodies attach by their tails to the mast cells, as shown in this figure, present in connective tissues. Later, when pollen grains again enter the body, they attach to the antigen binding sites of mast cells associated IgE cross-linking adjacent antibody molecules. This induces the mast cell to release histamine and other inflammatory agents from their granules vascle, a process called degranulation. Recall that histamine causes dilation and increased permeability of small body vessels. Okay. Such vascular changes lead to typical allergy symptoms, sneezing, runny nose, tearing eyes, and smooth muscle contractions that can result in breathing difficulty. Antihistamines diminish allergy symptoms by blocking receptors for histamine. An acute allergic response sometimes leads to anaphylactic shock, a whole body life threatening reaction that can occur within seconds of exposure to an allergen. Anaphylactic shock develops when a widespread mast cell degranulation triggers abrupt dilation of peripheral blood vessels, causing a precipitous drop in blood pressure. Death may occur within a few minutes. Allergic responses to a venom or penicillin can lead to anaphylactic shock in people who are extremely allergic to these substances. Likewise, people very allergic to peanuts, fish, or other foods have died from eating only tiny amounts of these allergens. Some individuals with several hypersensitivities carry syringes containing the hormones epinephrine, which counteracts this allergic response. Autoimmune diseases. In some individuals, the immune system loses tolerance for self and turns against certain molecules of the body, causing one of the many autoimmune diseases in systemic lupus erythematosus. Lupus. The immune system generates antibodies known as auto antibodies against a wide range of self molecules, including histones and DNA released by the normal breakdown of body cells. Lupus is characterized by skin rashes, fever, arthritis, and kidney dysfunction. Another antibody-mediated autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, leads to damage and painful inflammation of the cartilage and bone of joints, as shown in this figure. Notice that the in insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, the insulin-producing beta cells of the pancreas are the targets of autoimmune cytotoxic T cells. Yet another example of multiple sclerosis, the most common chronic neurological disease in developed countries. In this disease, T cells infiltrate the central nervous system and destroy the myelin sheath that surrounds some neurons. This results in a number of serious neurological abnormalities. The mechanisms leading to autoimmunity are not fully understood. For a long time, it was thought that people with autoimmune diseases had self-reactive lymphocytes that had happened to escape elimination during their development. We know now um, that healthy people also have lymphocytes with the capacity to react against cells. However, several regulatory mechanisms make these cells non-functional so that they cannot induce autoimmune reactions. Those autoimmune disease likely arises from some failure in immune system regulation. Immunodeficiency disease is the inability of the immune system to protect the body from pathogens or cancer cells that should normally be able to defeat reflects some sort of deficiency in the system. And immunodeficiency disease is caused by a genetic or developmental defect in the immune system is classified as an inborn or primary immunodeficiency. An immunodeficiency disease that develops later in the life following exposure to various chemical or biological agents is classified as an acquired or secondary immunodeficiency. Whatever the cause and nature of the immunodeficiency, a person with this kind of disease is subject to frequent and required infections, and also is more susceptible to cancer. Inborn primary immunodeficiencies. Inborn immunodeficiencies result from defects in the development of various immune system cells or defects in the production of specific proteins such as IgA antibodies or complement components depending on the specific genetic defect. Innate defenses, acquired defenses, or both may be embedded in severe combined immunodeficiency. SCID, both the humoral and cell-mediated branches of acquired immunity fail to function. The long-term survival of people with this genetic disease usually requires a bone marrow transplant that will continue to supply functional lymphocytes. In one type of SCID, a deficiency of enzyme adenosine deaminase leads to accumulation of substances that are toxic to both B and T cells. Since the early 1990s, medical researchers have been testing a gene therapy for this disease in which the individual's own bone marrow cells are removed, engineered to contain a functional adenosine deaminase gene and then returned to the body. Recent successes include a child with SCID who received adenosine deaminase gene therapy when she was 2 years old. About 2 years after treatment, her T cells and B cells were still functioning normally. In fact, when a family member came down with chickenpox, the treated girl did not develop any sign of the disease, evidence that her immune system was working. Acquired secondary immunodeficiency. Immune dysfunction that develops later in life can be caused by exposure to a number of agents. Drugs can use it to fight autoimmune diseases or to prevent the rejection or of a transplant, suppress the immune system, leading to an immunodeficiency state. In addition, the immune system is suppressed by certain cancers, especially Hodgkin's disease, which damages the lymphatic system. Acquired immunodeficiencies range from temporary states that may arise from physiological stress to the devastating acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS, which is caused by a virus. Stress and the immune system. Healthy immune function appears to depend on both the endocrine system and the nervous system. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the Greek physician Galen recorded that people suffering from depression were more likely than others to develop cancer. In fact, there is growing evidence that physical and emotional stress can harm immunity. Hormones secreted by the adrenal glands during stress affect the numbers of white blood cells and may suppress the immune system in other ways. The association between emotional stress and immune function also involves the nervous system. Some neurotransmitters secreted when we are relaxed and happy may enhance immunity. In one study, college students were examined just after a vacation and again during final exams. The immune system were impaired in various ways during exam week. For example, interferon levels were lower. These and other observations indicate that general health and state of mind affect immunity. Physiological evidence also points to an immune system nervous system link. Receptors for neurotransmitters have been discovered on the surface of lymphocytes, and a network of nerve fibers penetrates deep into the thymus. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS. People with AIDS are highly susceptible to opportunistic infections and cancer that take advantage of an immune system incapable. For example, infection by pneumocystis carinii ubiquitis fungus can cause severe pneumonia in people with AIDS, but is successfully rebuffed by individuals with a healthy immune system. Likewise, Kaposi's sarcoma is a rare cancer that occurs most commonly in AIDS patients. Such opportunistic diseases as well as neurological damage and physiological wasting can lead to death from AIDS. Because AIDS arises from the loss of helper T cells, both humoral and cell-mediated immune responses are impaired. This loss of helper T cells results from infection by the human immune deficiency virus HIV. A retrovirus HIV gains entry into cells by making use of three proteins that HIV or helper T cells is that the cell's CD4 molecule. The virus also infects over cell types such as macrophages and brain cells that have low levels of CD4, as shown in this figure. Notice that. In addition to CD4, HIV entry requires a second surface protein, a correspondor. One correspondor called fusin is present on all the cell types infected by HIV, while a different correspondor is present only on macrophages and helper T cells. Both of these HIV corresponders function as chemokine receptors in uninfected cells. In the fact these proteins were first recognized as HIV corresponders after it was discovered that chemokines can block HIV entry into cells. Once inside a cell, the HIV RNA genome is reverse transcribed and the product DNA is integrated into the host cell's genome. In this form, the viral genome can direct the production of new virus particles. The infected cell's machinery for transcription and translation, those are hijacked for the benefit of the virus. The death of helper T cells in HIV infection is thought to occur in two ways. Infected cells may succumb to the damaging effects of virus reproduction, and both infected and uninfected cells may undergo appropriately timed apoptosis triggered by the virus. At this time, HIV infection cannot be cured, although certain drugs can slow HIV reproduction and the progression to AIDS. However, these drugs are very expensive to not available to all infected people. In addition, the mutational changes that occur in each round of virus reproduction can generate strains of HIV that are drug resistant. The impact of viral drug resistance can be minimized by using a combination of drugs. Virus is nearly resistant to one drug can be defeated by another, but the appearance of strains resistant to multiple drugs reduces the effectiveness of multi-drug cocktails in some patients. Frequent mutational changes in HIV surface antigens also have hampered efforts to develop an effective vaccine. Transmission of HIV requires the transfer of body fluids containing infected cells, such as semen or blood, from person to person, unprotected sex, that is, without a condom, among male homosexuals, and transmission via HIV contaminated needles, typical among intravenous drug users, account for most of the HIV infections in the United States. However, transmission of HIV among heterosexuals is rapidly increasing as a result of unprotected sex with unaffected partners. In Africa and Asia, transmission occurs primarily by heterosexual sex. In a December 23 report, the joint United Nations program on AIDS estimated that 40 million people worldwide are living with HIV/AIDS. The best approach for slowing the spread of HIV is to educate people about the practices that transmit the virus, such as using dirty needles and having sex without a condom. Although condoms do not completely eliminate the risk of transmitting HIV or other similarly transmitted viruses, such as the hepatitis B virus, they do reduce it. Anyone who has sex, vaginal, oral, with the potentially infected partners risks exposure to the deadly virus.